can handle that. Just talk.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It's like a great way to end a week on a Friday afternoon.
It's so true, right?
Cool. So who are you? What are you? Like, what do you do? How do you identify yourself? When someone asks you, what do you do?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question. I'm a lot of things. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I work in the nonprofit sector, so I love people. I love working with people. I love helping people. I now am like comfortable saying I'm an artist. I think that's something that I felt really uncomfortable with much of my life. I think it was this hidden kind of talent that I had that I didn't want anybody else to know. But our good friends Curtis and Rodney have done a great job of kind of helping me feel more comfortable with saying, you are an artist. And I think if it wasn't perfect, I didn't feel like I could call it art. And so this year, especially this last year, I've felt a lot more comfortable embracing my art. And it was something that I would keep kind of hidden in the corner and not let anybody see. Because you know this, you're an artist, but it's like such an expression of who you are. Like it's your raw emotion, it's your heart, it's your feelings. It's to me, when I paint a canvas or I create a design, it's my process, it's my therapy, right? So when I look at that canvas or I look at that piece of art, it's like looking at a therapy session for me. And so to share that with the world is really uncomfortable. So I would just hide it, But this year I have felt a lot more comfortable calling myself an artist. So I'm a lot of things, but an artist is one of those things.
So how long have you been doing art?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in an art family, different types of art, right? And it's always like if you would ask me as a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up? I would tell you I either want to be a therapist or a designer, an interior designer. I want to create atmospheres. And it's so funny because I've worked with people in the nonprofit sector for my career, but my passion and my outlet has always been design and art and creativity. So I was in business school and I've always been taught like get a business degree. That's where you're going to thrive the most in the business world. So I was in the middle of business school getting a business management degree. And I was in the middle of macroeconomics. And I had like a meltdown and I was like, this is not me. Like I'm failing micro and macroeconomics. I hate my life right now. So I dropped out of business school and I went to art school.
Cool.
And I didn't tell anybody but my husband. I was like this little closet artist. So I went to a design school that specialized in fashion and graphic design and interior design. And I went from failing to graduating valedictorian.
Oh, wow.
And
really?
Yeah. And we learned all kinds of neat programs like AutoCAD and renderings.
Yep.
And I've never loved a textile or history of furniture class more. I just loved it. I loved it. And it was just, my husband would come home from being out of town and I had remodeled half of our house. And I just... It's always been my way of connecting with myself, connecting with my emotions. It's my therapy. And when I'm in art, I feel most myself and most alive. But I just never shared that with anyone. So I've done it my whole life. My whole life, I have felt drawn and called to art and creativity and design and color. I just never shared it with anybody.
So how long have you been sharing it, like publicly?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So, it's funny. I painted this Johnny Cash painting. It's on my shirt. You've seen it.
Yep.
And the reason I did it is because when I was 17, my dad passed away in a motorcycle accident. And him and I always bonded over Johnny Cash, but I wasn't brave enough to tell him that we bonded over Johnny Cash. So he would pick me up from high school and he would blare Johnny Cash. And I secretly loved it, but outwardly hated it. I was a bratty teenager. And so on the anniversary of his death, I think it had been like 17 years. It was December 26th. And I just was feeling it that day, right? And I'm a person that loves emotion. Like I think we oftentimes project on people to be scared of emotions or emotions are bad. I think they're beautiful. I think they're one of the most incredible aspects of people. They tell us who we are, right? To feel, what a gift, right? I think it's something so unique that sets us apart. And so instead of being afraid of my emotions, I channel them through color or art. Mm-hmm. And so the day on the anniversary of my dad's death, I went in my office and I shut the door and I just painted this Johnny Cash. And I hated it at first. I thought it was kind of Frankenstein-y, but I fell in love with it over time. And I look at it and it is me processing missing my dad. And it was all the raw emotion. And so I've painted all kinds of crazy things. I've designed all kinds of amazing houses. I just never shared it. And I shared that painting on Instagram. And Curtis saw it. And Curtis, our friends at Studio Front Shop, and Curtis is so great at seeing something in someone and giving them confidence to share it with the world. And so Curtis is like, you're a badass, and Curtis loves Marilyn, right? And so I was like, I'm going to paint Marilyn. And so I was going through something hard and was processing this emotion of like being a woman when I was surrounded by all men and kind of being put down because of it and like underestimated because I was the only female in an environment of men. And I just channeled that and I loved it. I loved feeling underestimated. And I was like, I'll show you what I'm capable of. And I sat down and I painted her. And it took me a long time because you go through this process of doubting yourself and like, am I really capable of painting this? And I did a really great job on the left side. And then I had a panic and I was like, I can't do the right side. I'm too afraid. And then in one day, it took me like a month to do the left side. And in one day I did the whole right side. And I texted a picture of Curtis of that Marilyn. And he's like, hey, can I put this? Like, can I expand this and put this up in studio? And I was so terrified, but I let him do it. And there's something about like a 10-foot by 10-foot picture of what you painted on a wall that you can't run away from. And I put it out there and he's like, let's make t-shirts of it. And the next thing I knew was like, I can't really hide from this talent that I have, that I've done a really great job of keeping it really secret from everybody. And so this year's been a journey. It started with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fantastic, not just the painting, but the whole aesthetic in there.
Thank you.
It goes around the painting and it fits the painting. It's really great and it's funky and it's modern. And
Thank you.
It's just amazing. Like that's one of those places where you walk into and you immediately have the vibe of the entire place.
Thank you.
There. And I love stopping by there. And,
Thank you.
Your painting is a huge part of it.
Thank you.
To know that somebody was self-conscious creating it and sharing it.
Absolutely.
But
terrifying.
But it's also like the artist's curse, right?
It is. You
are driven to make something, but then terrified to share it.
Yeah. And it's so cool, even the whole design aesthetic of that shop. Curtis and Rodney said, I want Elvis meets Marilyn. And I could see, and it's so cool how we're designed with art because I see color in such a wild way and textures, and I feel them. I feel the pink velvet chair. I feel it in my soul. And so it was so fun to design that space because what's wild about that is I could see all the colors before we ever put Marilyn on the wall. And I think it's true to Elvis and Marilyn. You walk in there and I feel their souls and everything, the art that they brought to the world. Yep. I can feel it in that environment. So,
Curtis told me Rodney wanted to paint the pink chairs black.
Yeah. Could you imagine? What a tragedy.
I can see him saying that though completely.
I could too. And now I feel like the pink chair fits him so well.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's so perfect for him.
Yeah.
So, okay, you've crossed this barrier where I think a lot of people get stuck. What that is creating and sharing. The first step is creating. The second part is sharing. What would your advice be to anybody who's starting this journey now?
Yeah.
To bridge that gap of how do I now not just make the work, but how do I get it in front of people?
Yeah.
Once you start getting it in front of people, then it starts to change how you do the work, what the work is, and you start to really, truly develop yourself at that point.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I would say fear and insecurity and failure is all part of it. And so man, your question is so good, because to create art is one of the safest things you can do. Mm-hmm. But to share it with the world is one of the most vulnerable things you can do, because you're asking people to engage with and accept the most vulnerable part of who you are. Is there anything scarier to do?
It's pretty terrifying, right?
It's absolutely terrifying. And so you're going to put yourself out there, and people are going to embrace certain parts of it, and people are not going to embrace others. And so as successful as Marilyn is, and as successful as that was, I have a million failures that are just as much a part of it. And so you have to create art and be authentic to who you are, because it's you and it's your contribution to the world, not because somebody's going to accept or not accept it. And so art and content and putting yourself out there is more about you and what you're going to contribute to the world and being authentic to who you are. It's more about that and less about who embraces it or doesn't embrace it, because you're going to have one really great success and 25 to 30 to 40 failures that are not only behind it, but in front of it too.
I don't know if I'd call them failures though.
Yeah.
I think they're just learnings. It's like practice,
yes.
right? Like if you're playing basketball or football, you have practice and you have some days that are good and some days that are bad. They're not failures.
They're not.
And so, but
they're lessons and teachers. I love that.
Yep. And you also, has this happened to you where you do something and you're like, that's kind of trash. But then overwhelmingly more people like it than you do, and you can't figure out why.
Yeah, it's so true.
That happens it's happened quite a few times for me, and it's hard to sit there and figure out like what is it that is appealing to people about this one. When to me it's just,
It's so true. Yeah, I think it's unique what people will connect with, mm-hmm. right? And so you just put it out there and see what people connect with, see what they don't, and I think that in itself is an art form too. Yeah. And I think I love that you say that, like it's just a journey of learning. So if we can teach people more and more to be comfortable with learning,
yep,
it's such a great journey.
So much of it really is about just learning to be comfortable, just be comfortable.
Yeah.
And it seems like a very strange like connection, but for me, I had a big moment that shifted my perception in the world when I was boxing.
Wow.
Because you box in a gym just like you make art in a studio.
Yeah.
You're in the comfort of your own space, only surrounded by people you know, who trust you, who know you trust. And then all of a sudden you had to jump that distance of now I'm in public.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing. And it's very common for a lot of really good boxers to lose their first several fights.
Yeah.
And then they figure out this is what I'm doing wrong, and they adapt, and that's when they start to become great.
Yeah.
Because they figure that part of it out. And I remember for me, part of that was, and my coach used to say it, he's like, you're a different fighter in the gym than you are in the ring.
Wow.
Trying to figure that, like, what is that?
Wow.
What is happening? That I'd be more conservative in the ring. And I was in Raleigh, and it was a Marine, and I still hold a grudge against Marines because he knocked me square out. And I knew it was coming because I wasn't committing and I wasn't sticking to the plan that we had come up with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I remember like looking at him saying, "Oh, he's figuring this out, that I'm not really committing to this."
Yeah.
And as soon as I thought that, he hit me with an uppercut, and I was out.
Wow.
And I remember being on the ground, eyes closed, but thinking, "Okay, shit, I just got knocked out. I gotta get up." And I got up, and as I was getting up, pulling myself up with a rope, my coach put his arms around me.
Oh my gosh.
And he had thrown in the towel, and so I thought about that for a little bit, and at the end of the night, I circled back with him. He's like, "You good?" I'm like, "I'm actually good."
Yeah.
I'm like, "I'm actually good," because what happened is the worst thing I thought that could happen happened.
Wow.
And it was no big deal.
No big deal.
You know what I mean? It was in front of like 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Get knocked out cold. I'm like, okay, well that didn't kill me.
Right.
And like no one's going to remember this. And that started to give me confidence in day-to-day work.
Yeah.
So I used to stutter a lot when I was a kid. I didn't like public speaking. I didn't like being in front of people.
Yeah.
Expressing anything. I was always very shy of that.
Yeah.
And after that happened, like, well, that's embarrassing.
Right. Yeah.
What's the worst that's going to... So I started asking myself, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Worst thing that could happen to me.
And so for me, that was a big artistic shift in my mind, because then I started not caring so much about, the mistakes and all the things that people would pick up on and like, what are they going to say? They hate it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so good. Fine. One of my mottos, I actually have it tattooed on my arm. It says, show up, be brave, choose courage. And when you said you're laying on the ground in that, boxing ring and you said, oh shit, I just got knocked out. I think it's one of the most brave things we can do, right? Is show up in the ring. Show up, right? Like we don't know the outcome. We may show up good. We may show up bad. We may show up and get knocked out, but show up and be brave and choose courage. And it's in all aspects of life, right? Putting ourselves out there requires so much courage.
Yep.
It requires so much bravery. Even art, creativity, anything we do to show up and try something, just be brave and be courageous. And I would hope that we could celebrate that more in other people. Like even when we fail or get knocked down or get knocked out, like celebrate the courage and the bravery that it took for you to show up in the ring and box this Marine.
Yeah.
And what was the worst thing? Shit, I got knocked out.
Yep.
But I got up again and I got back in the ring and I did it again. And that's going to be everybody's journey of life,
yep.
right? We get knocked down. But if we can just choose courage, and I tell myself that every day, like when I sit in front of a canvas, even as I've transitioned into this journey of art and what that looks, I'm scared every day. Like,
sure, it's
terrifying to put yourself out there and express, will people accept this part of who I am? Or am I going to get, shit, I got knocked out, and I've had a couple of those. And, but I take a moment and I remind myself, celebrate your courage and your bravery to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be true to who you are. Because what a tragedy would it be if we get to the end of our lives and know that we have this incredible gift and we never shared it.
Yep.
We never contributed it. We never expressed it to anybody. We just kept it in a corner, afraid of people's judgments or people's opinions. What a tragedy, So I think to celebrate people's bravery and the courage to put themselves out there is so powerful. And somebody else can relate to that. Because the truth is,
100%.
More people, I've got knocked out, can relate to that moment of laying on the ground, getting your ass kicked. Like, I can relate to that more than I can being the victor of standing up and knocking somebody out,
Yep. I do think, too, there's a maturity level of once you have kids.
Yeah.
It greatly changes how you see the world, too. At least it did for me, because I was so shy and so afraid of so much. But then when you have so much love and investment in somebody else, and here's some perspective now that is, it's like if you could tell yourself what you tell your kids.
Yes.
How much time would you have saved in the journey,
So much.
And, but that's one of the things I love about being a parent is like, not only can I kind of show you what I've learned and what I've messed up, but that part of, if I can take some of that anxiety away, and I don't know if anybody really can, but, boy, you wish you could though, don't you?
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I love that you say that because we'll be their greatest cheerleaders, right? My son just got a guitar, and in his mind, he's like the greatest player, even though he started 2 days ago. But in my eyes, he'll be the greatest player, and if we can just impart that belief in them of like, I believe in you, and if we could see ourselves the way we see our kids, right? Like, and he's starting lessons and I see the greatness inside of him. Like I look at him and I watch him play, or my daughter, she'll sit in my art studio and paint, and it's beautiful. I look at that and I'm like, yes, girl, like pick those colors, play, experiment, see how the textures combine. Or I watch my son, just the bravery to play me a song he doesn't really know. But when I look at him, I see all that he can become. I see the greatness on the inside of him, right? He's my son. She's my daughter. I love it. But if we could see ourselves the way that we look at our own kids, like, girl, yes, you can. Play with those textures. Try that song. Explore. Try something new. You're never too old to try something new, to keep learning, like, If that could be our own internal voice, the voice that we give our kids, if that could be our voice, how powerful could we be?
Why isn't it that way though, you think? Like why because I love what you said. If we could love ourselves the way we love our kids, we would be so much happier and more at ease and peaceful in the world. What is it that's hardwired in our brains to be so self-critical?
That's such a great question. So I think a couple of things. I think we are our own critic, but I think we fear the pain of people's judgments. Mm-hmm. And if we could separate ourselves from the weight that we give people's opinions and the weight that we give our own opinions, if we could just separate ourselves from that, because I think oftentimes we hold ourselves back because we're afraid of the pain, right? The pain of rejection, the pain of judgment, the pain of failure, the pain of making a mistake. If we could really separate ourselves from that and celebrate the try and celebrate the greatness and celebrate the journey, like I'm not going to just be a great painter tomorrow, but today I try it and tomorrow I try it and the next day I try it and I celebrate those journeys of A to B and B to C and C to D. I think if we can just separate ourselves from our own judgment and the judgments of others and embrace the courage and embrace the bravery, self-talk is so important. I'm a huge fan of like Mel Robbins, and she does this thing where like she gives herself a high five in her mirror every morning and she's like, you can do this. Change your self-talk, right? So I have this mirror in my office, in my studio space, and every day I look at it. And if I can be like super vulnerable, I'm not brave enough yet in my self-talk to say like, Casey, you are a badass. Casey, you can do this. Casey, you have greatness on the inside of you today. And so I've decided that on that mirror, I'm going to trace my high five, right? And I'm going to give myself a high five every day. And then I'm going to make my declarative statements before I allow any other voices into my mind. Like if nobody else champions you, at least champion yourself, right? And we have to do better at our self-talk of like, say these things long enough to yourself and eventually you're going to believe them, right? Like, I can do this. I'm going to kick butt and take names today. Like, I can conquer this. And even when I don't, I'm going to get up and I'm going to try again and I'm going to do better tomorrow, you know? Yep. So I think we have to fix our self-talk. Like, I think it starts with us and tuning out the voices of naysayers or tuning out the critical voices and our own critical voice, and then changing our self-talk to really believe that it's everything you need is on the inside of you. You just have to channel it and try and be brave enough to risk it.
Yep. And I think so much of that is just this behavior that we have to foster and do.
Yeah.
So let me back up from that a little bit. I do think there's a little bit of a negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Because it's safer, so that if you do fail, well,
yeah,
it's like, I knew I was going to fail.
It's so true. It's like we buffer the pain with like preparing ourselves for failure.
Yeah, we train. Yeah, exactly. And so that's step one. And then step two is trying to, after years and years of doing that, I've been really bad with myself with that. And I think it's because I was trying to cover up for when I don't succeed.
Yeah.
I'm giving myself the out, but it's so detrimental to do that, I think.
Yeah.
And so I still fall into that. That's still my default, and it's very hard. And I'm old, and so like I can't imagine being a teenager having to try and deal with this. But it is so hard to turn around and say, well, why not me? Like why I can do this, or to deprogram years of negative thoughts is very difficult. And then of course the other part of it is it also becomes hard because you need to be critical and a great self-curator to be any kind of craftsman or artist or whatever. So where's that balance?
Yeah.
Like where is that balance? Because at some point you need to be critical. My friend David once made fun of me because he says I rejected, I think this is an exaggeration, but he says I rejected 50 cuts of a video because I hated the music. Yeah. And what I wanted to tell him was like, no, however hard I am on you, I'm so much worse.
1,000,000 times harder on yourself.
And so I don't know how to start to flip that, because going back to what you said, if we could see ourselves as we see others, I'm much more forgiving on work that other people do.
1,000,000 times.
How many things did I ruin by being too critical and just throw in the trash can, not save, not share.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I mean, a lot.
It's
a
so
lot of
true.
stuff, but it's hard to flip that script in your head when you train yourself for years to be critical.
Yeah. And it's so, I love that concept of, you know, when we ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? Like, what are you really afraid of? Right. And I love having a critical eye is so, but perfectionism, really, what does Brene say? She says perfectionism is, what does she say? The thief, or comparison is the thief of happiness. Mm-hmm. And perfectionism is really robbing you from being yourself, your greatest self. And so I think it's that fine line between we'll never be perfect. Our art will never be perfect. Our whatever our craft is that we're putting out there. Am I trying to be the best, or am I trying to just be perfect? But I love that concept. I think that's such a great juxtaposition of what am I really afraid of versus like, if I'm striving for perfection, I'll never get there.
Never get it.
But it's that constant critic that lives inside of my brain that's made me great at what I do. You know, but in my own eyes, I'm never really great at it.
Right.
You know?
Which is, I guess, is why it's so important to have the people around you
who
do fill that role. And that's why, you know, Josh, the other owner of the studio, is so great for me.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the chair that you're in now 2 days ago, and I was like, I got to let this go. I got to just finish this thing I'm working on and just let it go. And I can't. He's like, you're doing it for yourself. He's like, no one else is going to see it.
Yep.
Just be done. And it's so hard for me to let go of things like that.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because that's why having people who truly know you around you is so important, because they can, like, if I was using Curtis and Rodney as an example, if it wasn't for them, I would have never shown Marilyn to anybody.
Yeah.
I would have kept her the biggest secret, because I can look at that picture and I see all the imperfections and all the failures of where I could have done better. And I would have hidden her from the world, but it took somebody else's eye to say, that's incredible. Put that out there. Let the world experience that art. And it takes people, you know, my husband's another one. He's my greatest cheerleader. I have great friends around me. A couple of my friends, James and Michael, great cheerleaders of me, or Curtis or Rodney, that just put this on a t-shirt. And I'm like, but what if nobody buys it? You know? Yeah.
But you know, the other great part about that is that when you mess up and they tell you,
yes,
you take it seriously.
You really
because
do.
Because there's weight to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you know, nobody needs like a yes man, just like, everything's great.
You'll be surrounded with people with nothing to say. Yeah,
but when you're supported, and then someone's like, I think this could be different. I think you could have acted different. I think you could have said this different. Amber says that to me all the time. She's like, I think you could have said that nicer. Yeah. And she's right. And it doesn't come out of being mean. It's just I'm very direct and I'm always thinking about time.
Yeah.
But words have weight. Yeah. And the way you say things have weight. And so, yeah, I definitely think like it's when you have the right people around you, it's a great support. But also that means that you actually have true critics who you need to listen to, because you shouldn't listen to probably 90% of the critics out there. Yeah. But when one of your core circle says something, it's probably warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. Brene Brown, I think, has a really great analogy of that, where she talks about the people in the arena with you. Mm-hmm. You know, there are always people in the nosebleed sections hurling mean comments at you. But the people that are in the arena with you, who are bloody and beat up with you, they're in the trenches with you, those are voices that I'll pause for a second and say, you're right. I was a jerk, or I was out of line, or I am a better leader than that, or I am a better artist than that, or you're thankful for that constructive criticism or that feedback that keeps you pushing for greatness or keeps you pushing to be better tomorrow than you are today.
I can't see you being a jerk ever.
I have my moments.
Do you?
I do.
I guess we all do, but I just can't see that.
I would hope that they're rare, but I have my moments.
Yeah. It's kind of like Curtis, or there's just, you know, there's some of these people that were just so happy and nice all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to see you get mad. Yeah. I want to see you get mad and swear at a kid. Yeah. Just do it one time. Be human.
She occasionally sneaks out, you know. There's a reason that I love some of these like amazing people, like the Johnny Cash and the Elvis and the Marilyn and the Dolly Parton. You know, they have sides to them that got them where they are. So she sneaks out on occasion.
That's funny. That's funny. what's next? So like you've been an artist forever, in the closet a couple years now, in public. Like what is your big project you want to do if you get the opportunity to do?
Gosh, that's such a great question. What is next? So a couple of things. I'm painting Dolly Parton. I need to finish that. Fear's holding me back a little bit, but there's a whole line around Dolly Parton that I'm excited to explore what that looks like. I'm putting my art out more. I've never sold a painting. I've never offered them for sale. I've never done custom art for people, so that's next.
That's cool.
For me, a bit vulnerable. I also have a vintage Shasta camper that I'm turning into a photo booth that will be.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I love.
That's cool.
I love I'm not a photographer, but I love the art of creating environments for people to capture sweet moments in their lives. I love designing photo booths. I love designing photo sets, as you guys do as well, that capture some of the most important moments in people's lives. And I think it's such a beautiful art to create that. So I have a 1967 vintage Shasta camper that I transported from Wisconsin here.
Wow.
And I've gutted the inside of it, and I'm turning it into like a cute little mobile photo booth.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I might turn the whole inside pink. I think it's just a splash on my personality, but we'll see. And so I've dragged my feet a little too long on. She's called the Gypsy.
Okay.
So my goal is to have her done by the summer and have her out on the road making magical photo booths through people. And once I get that up and going, I'm going to create a mobile bar. That's going to be, I want to do a bus, like a VW bus, and it's the Gypsy bus. So we'll have the Gypsy booth, the Gypsy bus, the Gypsy bar. So that's
what's the tie with gypsies? It's just, is that just what your soul feels like?
Yeah. It's just a wanderer, right? Yeah. Like just this, where's tomorrow going to take me? You know, so I have a 9-to-5 job in the nonprofit sector, and that's fun. And that keeps me very busy, and I love it. I get to serve people and do great things for people. But I want to keep pushing the bounds and limits of art and sell my artwork and create more and more paintings and turn them into wearable designs and just bring more art to people. So I want to put my art out there a lot more, and I want to do, I need to get my Gypsy up and going. I will by this summer. And I may take on, I've done some murals, which are kind of fun. I'm not for sure if I want to explore that world. They are really hard work.
Is it?
It is.
What makes that so much harder compared to like an environment? Because an environment's 3D textures, feel, touch, all of it.
So
sights.
You want to know what makes it harder? A little bit more outside of my comfort zone. So when it comes to an environment, I can see it all in my brain, and I can do it in my sleep. It's easy. Environments are my comfort zone. Probably painting's a little more hard, but murals are such a bigger scope of it.
Yeah.
And so you think it's easy, right? You just project it up and paint it, but it's so much fine detail and a lot of meticulous handwork. Yeah. And so it's like the difficulty of a painting on such a larger scan, and it's outside of my comfort zone, so it's a little bit harder for me.
Sure.
So I don't know. We'll see what that world holds.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. I can imagine a huge mural and then like an outdoor patio. That would be all yours. You could do the whole.
I would love
the
it.
whole thing.
Yeah, I would love that. Cool. That would be incrable.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank
this
you
went
for
by
having me.
so quickly. I could talk to you forever.
Thank you.
And yeah, again, big shout out to Curtis and Rodney over at Studio Print Shop.
Yeah.
They have been great champions of this area and all of the artists in the area. And I love, just by knowing them, I've met more people like you who also share that same kind of drive and like empathy for the world of the creative folks that are out there.
Yes.
So
thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah. And you guys are doing an amazing thing. So I feel so honored to sit and talk with you, and I could talk art and creativity and design and atmosphere all day.